Just being natural aliveness as itself, nothing to accomplish, nothing left undone. Again and again, the song of change teaches us, continuously played by all phenomena. Regardless of past commitment, vow only arises as our actual condition. Congruency is the only way forward. Embracing one's whole self, intimacy, melting the obscuring ice of self-hatred. In the resonant heart, just like me, all who I see long for freedom. Within dimensional embodiment, shining in totality, relative space reveals the expanse of space within, and thoughts are put in their own place. From within the expanse, exchanging self for other, emotional energy reaches its apex without eclipsing into story. Through sheer honesty and luminous self-respect, The light of kindness illuminates what is in the shadows. Whatever is present, especially that which you are ashamed of, is the luminous offering that pleases the dramas. Pulling down the many-colored rainbow flowers like snowflakes all around, the transparent, ever-present teacher blesses us when we call for help. Nature, the most beautiful temple and skillful teacher, through opening our senses, her blessings enter our heart as the unborn transmission. You are my personal Drala, truly seeing and being seen, giving each other the transmission of goodness. The deity is none other than yourself, true nature transparently expressing itself through your beautiful uniqueness. Through the naturally arising bliss of union, the example of non-conceptual wisdom illuminates our practice to guide us like a torch. like a lucid dream, that which cognizes and that which is cognized are of the same substance. Turning perceptions around, the eye of nature looking back at us recognizes the deities in never-ending union. Dissolving the meditator, letting movement uncoil itself, freedom through total surrender in the spacious expanse of being. Ultimate and relative in harmony, thoughts translucent while appearing, this unceasing, instantaneous, luminous creativity is wisdom. In the totality beyond apprehension, expressing itself as non-referential compassion, dawns the natural resonance of reality. Inseparable, cognizance and motility sow the seeds that ensure benefit. Aspirations from the expanse issue forth to each individual expressing the expanse. Centerless, timeless, everything is the face of the deity. All time and space within the human heart, the holographic universe is true freedom. Just being, natural aliveness as itself, nothing to accomplish, nothing left undone.
So if a seed grows a tree or a flower, and a seed um, has like its own mandala, then it can blossom into something, you know, any number of things based on its channels and karma and DNA and all that stuff. If the seed of compassion, of Mahakaruna, great compassion, beyond friends, enemies, neutrals, unconditional love, of the highest magnitude of saints, of bodhisattvas, of heroic proportions, that all comes from the the seed of sad joy, or you know, um, Janet and I were talking yesterday about the line from Shakespeare. What is it? Parting is such sweet sorrow. So there it is, sweet sorrow. So you have that beautiful notion, and I love it because it's the essential emotion that is zero and one in everyone's experience. It is the entryway, the gate to the more subtle dimensions of consciousness where we can actually feel totality. One of the dangers of the conceptual mind and using mindfulness primarily is that focusing the mind on an object and returning to that object, though that strength that we develop is essential. But if that method isn't also coupled with vision and a sense of totality, in some sense, we're just continuing this kind of here and there dualistic approach and one thing at a time. The conceptual mind can only think one thing at a time. And the old story is the monkey in the house, and if my eyes and mouth and nostrils are windows, the monkey moves around really quickly, and it looks like there's a bunch of monkeys in the house. But in reality, there's just one monkey that's really fast. And that analogy is about our sixth consciousness. It seems to be able to think many things at once, but actually it's just going very quickly between things. Creates an illusion, right? So really the conceptual mind can only have one focus at a time. Whereas our awareness it can hold multiple objects, multiple. So we'll just start there for a moment. here we have that sense of stacking the five senses: touch, along with taste, along with smell, along with sound, along with sight. Opening to them, acknowledging that they're always shining, acknowledging the sixth consciousness, the thinking mind, giving equal attention, as much, not don't have to keep a track of it. You're not measuring how equal it is, but just generally distributed attention to the senses. Some senses are more prominent. Visual field is more prominent than sound. Sound's more prominent than smell. Taste is sometimes more dormant than smell. Touch is more pervasive, but sometimes dormant compared to sight and sound. So that there are, they show up in different ways, but that's not the point. It's just that we're open to all of them. And we can actually learn how to feel them all at once, not in equal amounts. Again, it's not about that, but equally aware of them. That's the point. And then however they show up, if I put something in my mouth, it's going to get more prominent, right? That's okay. That's fine. We're not talking about, it's not about some idea of equality, but it's actual equality where everything has its own expression. And subtlety is fine. It's just as loud as loudness. Loudness is just as quiet as subtlety when we feel them all together. Thoughts also get a lot of attention. And here we just notice that we give them a lot of attention and come back to the rest of the senses. It's not different from ordinary basic shamatha. It's just we're using, instead of an exclusion to the object of meditation, we're doing an inclusion to the array of senses fields, the spaces of senses, the dhatus or spaces. Resting in this way, we can feel a sense of spaciousness and clarity. We can also notice how seductive the thinking process is, but we're not trying to suppress it. We can watch the eclipse happen, where we start to give too much attention to one part of the totality, and then all of our luminosity gets turned inside out. That's what I call the blackout, where our own production becomes so seductive, we enter into it like a dream, but not necessarily lucidly, right? That's how we can sit here and be just sitting our way, and then suddenly we're in a fantasy or in something that's not happening right now, and then we come back, and it's this strange thing, right? That's the blackout into a particular aspect of experience. And there's something here that's quite mirror-like or democratic about aliveness and awareness. It doesn't really care what you're thinking, if you're thinking this or thinking that. From the point of view of this awareness and aliveness, it's like aliveness is sort of like chewing on some celery, like, it's all the same to me. Do what you want. I got a trillion eyes out there doing stuff. There's a bug in a circle going around. He's been doing it for like 6 days. I don't know. It's not my problem. You ever seen when a bug is just sort of going you're like, are you, what? Can we talk? What are you doing? Earlier I had one up on my window doing it. But then I was like, well, you know what? They're exploring. And if the bug could talk to me, the bug would be like, well, you idiots do the same thing over and over every morning. What are you yelling at me for? Circles aren't bad. You said so yourself. Oh, you're right. Sorry, I didn't think of it that way. It's a new time. Every time I come around, it's now. Okay? I'm like, you're right. You're right. You're right. So it's more about the adventure than the content. It's more about the experience of this moment, right? And I think there's something innately gentle about just this aliveness in that it can allow things to do and be and live how they want to live, or live according to whatever confusion they get into or don't get into. I mean, it's very magnanimous and somewhat benign in that we're allowed to get into all sorts of trouble with our aliveness. Our aliveness is not like, hold on, you're being an idiot. It's more just like, okay, we're going here. Now, the natural intelligence of aliveness, and the reason I've gone all the way back to the first gesture today, is so important, because without the natural intelligence and this sense of totality, as we go forward in the gestures, we could easily approach them the way we've approached, our sort of more one-pointed type practices where we're excluding things and focusing on one thing. And it's important to know that sad joy, which we've been doing for the last week, and this is our last day of that practice. Of course, it pervades on. But tonight we'll be introducing the fifth gesture. And the idea is that it's important to realize this 0 and 1 quality is built into aliveness. When we stack the 5 or 6 senses, we have an experience of a totality that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's something different that happens in our consciousness and our awareness. We start to enter into more of the spacious, pure awareness. And it's important that we know how to do that, or we have at least interest in that, and we keep building that skill, because everything we're going to do really relies on that. And the entire fourth gesture practices were about this kind of nurturing and a sense of safety. But I do think that when we have the 0 and oneness of sad joy, we could just rouse at the end here a moment of sad joy, just sweet sorrow. That everything that is born dies, everything that comes together comes apart. These are not things that we tend to like, but they mark the human condition as one of sweet sorrow, that it's precious that we have the opportunity we're having right now, right? It's precious that we're in these bodies, that we can see and hear each other. And it's also precious to share the Dharma together and to have this time to deepen our understanding. That staying open to that sadness also allows us to feel the richness or fullness of being a person. So again, we have this 0 and 1, we're holding both the sweetness and the sadness. And we can see how we might eclipse more into one or the other, and to stay in, to allow both to be present. That's also what we do when we're compassionate to others, right? They're suffering, they're hurting. And instead of us going, stop that, cheer up, or I'm out of here, they're a drag. Instead, we see their suffering and our heart opens to it, and we don't know if we can help. We check it out, we survey the scene, we try to. Maybe we don't, maybe we're like a little hesitant, but we're engaged, we're trying. And as you open to someone else's suffering, the irony is you don't experience their suffering the way they do, because you're not eclipsed by it, right? You're not blacked out in their story, so you just see the raw energy. And then there's a sweetness because you're big enough, your heart's big enough to hold them, and you want them to be happy. So sweetness and suffering also mix in compassion. And that's why sad joy is the seed of great compassion, right? But it's innate in aliveness, the ability to hold bigger than just one point here and there, this and that. It's bigger, right? And we develop that incrementally together. And it's okay if there's times we're like, I don't want the sad part, I just want the happy part. We just notice that thought and that feeling and we go, well, yeah, but honestly, there is a sad part here too. I can ignore it. I can pretend, wish it wasn't there, but maybe if I put them together and I embrace it, surrender to it, embrace it, then again, the sum of the parts is greater than either thing. The fullness we feel is bigger than just a little happy, tiny happy feeling. It's much more rich and deep and dimensional, and suddenly we feel the meaning and depth. And then we start thinking, wow, all these things that come together and go apart, maybe they come back together and go apart again, and maybe there's all these different things happening, and maybe you can't even figure it out. So then your heart just wants to be more and more open, more and more loving. And that they call the bodhisattva fever, when you just know that love in loving people is the most meaningful thing, and it just keeps growing. And then we get into that even more in the seventh gesture, in the fifth gesture too, but we'll see in the next couple of gestures. We're going to go through all that. All right. Oh, you sentient beings, I have a good or bad connection with. As soon as you have left this confused dimension, may you be born in the Western Sukhavati, and once you're born there, complete the bloomings and the past. Sad joy. Sad joy.